don't mind me, just sneaking out to go to Kohl's. The home deals right now, they're too good to pass up. Like up to 40% off Cuddle Beds bedding, up to 50% off the cutest fall decor, and up to 25% off Ninja kitchen appliances. How can I resist? You can even get 15% off or 15, 20, or 30% off with a Kohl's card. So yeah, I'm going all in for fall, and I can't even wait. Select styles. Offers end October 17th. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Jennie Walker, and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I have the great pleasure to introduce you to a fellow vintage gal. As a matter of fact, she is the owner of Vintage PS Gal in Palm Springs, and her name is Shelly Clark. She is with us today, this morning. It's early on the West Coast, to tell us all about her shop, her love of vintage, and her participation in the upcoming event in Palm Springs at the Curated Vintage event on October 16th. Shelly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, tell me, you're one of the vendors, one of 17 vendors attending the show. Tell me more about who you are, how you got started in all of this, and a little bit of, we'll get into once we learn that, a little more about the state of vintage in Palm Springs.
Yes, definitely. Well, I actually was born and raised in Palm Springs. My grandparents met on Palm Canyon, which is the iconic street in Palm Springs, for those of you that aren't familiar, in the 30s. So we've been here a long time. There are not a lot of us around. My parents actually met at St. Teresa Catholic School in Palm Springs in the 6th grade. So our roots run deep in the desert, and with a desert lifestyle, I just was raised around, you know, everything that was the desert lifestyle. I had grandparents that were very involved in the community, they were golfers, and they belonged to different clubs, the Lions Club, the Polo Club, all these different clubs. And when my parents moved back here, they decided to just kind of do what my grandparents did. So through those opportunities, I was in a world of color and pattern and some exquisite taste. And I think it just colored, you know, the lens at which I looked through the world, which was a very colorful one, living here in Palm Springs, that I'm very grateful for. So in probably my senior year of high school, that was the era of grunge, and I started shopping we were all looking for Levi's and old flannels and all that kind of stuff. So I spent a lot of time on Haight-Ashbury when I'd go up to San Francisco, or on Melrose, and we'd dig through all those their stores. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And I just never stopped. I just continued to go to estate sales and vintage stores, and you know, just started collecting. My collection obviously changed from when I was 19 to then in my late 20s. I started to recognize that clothes, the way they were cut in the 50s and 60s, really fit my body so much better than clothes that were being cut today. The fit models, I don't know, and everything was just made so much better. I've sewn since I was a young girl, so I have such an appreciation for that kind of tailoring and just the way the fabrics and the way things were done, that I just really took to it, and I loved the hunt, but I also just appreciated so much the workmanship of that era.
Sure.
So I started really collecting all that kind of stuff, and then at some point, I think I thought, I have a lot of stuff. I've accumulated quite a collection. And so I walked into an antique mall in Cathedral City at the time, and I spoke to the kind lady behind the counter, and I asked about opening a booth space. And she wasn't real fond about clothing, but she said I could have a few little things, you know, and that's where it started 11 years ago. I started my business of Vintage PS Gal, of selling vintage clothing, accessories, jewelry, and housewares.
Wow, that is pretty fantastic. So you've been at this basically always, and so it sounds like you had a collection gone wild that you then started to sell in this little. I love that, and I love that you have appreciated over time kind of what you were looking at, like the quality and the cuts and things like that. I think that draws a lot of people into vintage. It certainly does. For me, just the quality of what's out there, and it's made so differently than what they do today. So you and I are going to be meeting at this event called the Curated Vintage Event in Palm Springs during Modernism Week. We will be there October 16th, so I'm really looking forward to meeting you. But tell me the kinds of things that I'm going to find in your booth. You talk about the desert culture, which, I've never been to Palm Springs. I only know what I've seen on TV. So
right.
I'm not even sure what that is other than the photos I have seen of Palm Springs. And yes, it is very bright. It's very lively. It's very colorful. But tell me what we're going to find in your booth, and then tell us more about what is Palm Springs culture and what does that fashion say and represent?
Certainly. Well, I have to take you back just a second and tell you that I had two very, very different grandmothers who definitely colored my vision of fashion and the world around me. I had one grandma that loved pop the color. Her house was yellow and green and bright and very Palm Springs. And then I had another grandmother who was quite sophisticated and collected antiques from all over the world, had amazing jewelry. She worked for a local jeweler who was a former silent film actress, Andrea Howard, and they sold to, the likes of Bob Hope and Red Skeleton and Frank Sinatra, and all of those guys would come in and buy for their wives these amazing pieces. So I had a very, it was very different depending on where I went. When my parents would go out, they would send me one place or the other, and so I really learned to appreciate both. So when you're in my booth, I think you can see that. There's going to be some very refined classic things, and then there's going to be really bright, colorful, happy patterns and colors. And I think that just really stems from, my life growing up here and living amongst these two very different ladies and their style. It definitely, colored my world. And so you're going to find different things. I love, anything that is that old, like Hawaiian bark cloth, that really beautiful, it hangs so lovely. I love any kind of caftan. I love lacy, frilly boudoir pieces. I have a few of those. And then I'll have classic, suits. I'll have classic 60s, looking suits and dresses. And even some, and then I've being a child of the 70s, of course, that seeps in there as well. So there is definitely some polyester and some butterfly collars and just funky patterns, optic patterns that I love from the 70s. So it's an eclectic mix, I would definitely say, is what you're going to, find. I'll also have some Missoni and some higher end brands, but I always like to mix things. I love the idea of wearing, a pair of jeans from Target with a Chanel blazer. I love that juxtaposition in fashion when you can do that. So you'll definitely see that as well.
Now, is this your first? Is this your first pop-up? I'm going to call it a pop-up shop, for lack of a better word. But is this your first time or something like this?
No, I've been with the Curated since its inception, which was a few years ago. So I've been doing it for the whole time, and I also do the Palm Springs Vintage Market the first Sunday of the month, and then I still have my booth space at Victoria's Attic in Palm Springs. So
how is it different doing this? How is it different doing this curated vintage event compared to these other ways? Because basically they're different outlets for your
they're totally
right. Tell us how it's
different.
How the customers are different. Maybe you sell different things, but I'd like to learn more about that.
Sure. Yes. I feel I love everything I do, but I really love the curated event because you get buyers that love vintage and understand vintage, which is, I just love, I find that, I love the novice too, or just someone who happens upon you. They can have great energy, but someone who really appreciates vintage is so fun to talk with and look at pieces with. And so at the Curated, I definitely try to have kind of just more special pieces. And maybe, I have casual stuff, but not as much on the casual end, where at the market and in my store, I have more of there's a lot more casual poolside kind of things, but I do also have that at Curated. But yeah, it's really a lovely room and atmosphere, and you're surrounded by other people who love vintage. So, not to be a geek, but it's kind of like a vintage clothing, Super Bowl for us all.
Wow.
So we love that.
Well, just so you know, I will not have any caftans, so I will send them all to you. I don't own any. I don't have any for sale, so I'm probably missing out. But I do have a few kimonos I could bring. Do people buy those? Should I bring those down? I don't know.
Yeah, people like to have a robe to walk around the house in. You asked earlier, what is the desert lifestyle? Well, you have to consider our temperature. So we don't have a lot of, we have cold weather for a small spell in the middle, in January and December. But most of our days, throughout the season are beautiful. And then obviously the summer is quite hot. So the lifestyle is that people want to wear things that have airflow, that are comfortable. It needs to breathe. So that's where the caftan comes in, the Hawaiian kind of, fabrics and looks. Cause I am in trouble then, Shelly. I'm in trouble because I have none of that. I have none of it. I am. I'm going to have to send them all to you. I'll be like, this is going to be a bust because all I have is very form-fitting, close-fitting vintage Moschino, basically, or like gowns. So I'm going to be really in trouble. I just don't have it. Right. No, there's a place for that too, though. There's completely a place for that. So don't fret. Like it's there are events here that you have to be dressed up for and that you go to, and so and we get people from all over who come to this event. We get people from LA and San Francisco and Washington and New York. So you'll be fine. You'll do great. So why don't you, since you've done this curated event, and it's my first time, and our listeners are a lot of resellers, lovers of vintage, people who have products that they sell to the vintage community, like software and things like that. So tell me about this event and what people can expect from your perspective, since you've been to it a number of times. And I assume that it's growing each time. And can you tell me about the enthusiasm? Can you tell me about, are these locals? Are these dealers? Are these tourists? What is your take on it? You really get a mix, and I think that's what's really great. I think, Mitchell's done a really good job of getting dealers from all over, so that it makes it exciting to see what, like you said, like the kind of stuff you're going to bring from where you're from, and then what we have, so it's always a lovely event. It's in the beautiful ballroom, except for last year when we were put outside due to COVID. It's a beautiful ballroom in the temple. The temple's been there, my whole life, just a beautiful building. And it's just, it's not stuffy, but it's classy, and it's and what I love is you get these new people that have, are here for modernism, or they're just visiting the valley and happen upon us, that are, from all over, and they're fun. And then there's always a gaggle of our local people, who support us, and we're so grateful for their support. And they come out to every event, and they'll be so colorful. You'll know right away. They'll be dressed very colorfully with matching bags and sunglasses, and they're just They're a hoot, and they bring such a fun energy. I often say sometimes I feel like I'm having a party in my space, talking with my local people that I love so much. So it's really it's just a fun event because you really get a taste of all different types of people, and you get to see so many beautiful things, So I think you'll really enjoy it.
Well, I agree with your statement about how much fun it is when you're around people who appreciate vintage. It is a joy and a half to be able to talk to vintage lovers about what I have in my store in Pasadena. I have this store called Viden Luxury Consignment, and within it is my entire vintage Moschino collection through my JennieGirl's Closet business, and people get so excited. And I think that you can't even compare the uniqueness and the quality of vintage to what's out there today. And I just, that there seems to be a lot of momentum around it right now. Like vintage is just off the charts. But tell me, Shelly, you are doing this full-time, part-time? I mean, how's you filling your time? Because, I mean, I can't really tell from your background yet kind of how this fits into everything else you're doing.
Well, I actually was a school teacher for 5 years, and then I had children and chose to stay home and be with them, and I raised them, and that was just, real joy of my life. They're now in college and doing fabulous, and that's the goal. So when they were about 10, maybe even younger, maybe 9, I started this business, and it was very, very part-time, my little booth space, and that's all I did. And that's what I had time for, and I loved it because I had a little thing that I did, for me. And then I would spend the rest of my day, picking up and homework and all those wonderful things. So it really gave me the freedom to do that, to have that kind of a life. And then as they became less dependent on me, I was able to grow my business and make a bigger space, and then start to do the vintage market, and then add on the curated. So just, every year kind of a new layer, selling on Instagram, like kind of doing all these things. It just began to grow. My business began to grow from ladies who were local calling me and saying, "Oh, Shelly, I have this, event and I need something, what do you have?" And then I'd pull it, and we'd do fittings and that way, kind of a personal business as well. So it's been really fun. I'm very involved in my church, and I was so involved with the schools. But now I have a lot of freedom, so I'm really enjoying it, and obviously spending a lot more time on this business. But it's always interesting, I will say that. And I really think you're right that vintage is so important right now, and people get it. I speak with young girls in the community, and I do I help with their fashion shows. There's a mother-daughter organization here called National Charity League, and I help them with their fashion shows, and they have the girls pick a recycled look in some type of style or theme. I just did one on boho chic with these young ladies, and it was really fun, and I love to explain to them how important it is, how fast fashion, I get, is fun and exciting, but that everything is cyclical, and they could find these looks if they went to their thrift stores, if they went to vintage stores, and it's so much more interesting, and it's better, it's well made, and they'll be unique, they'll be one of a kind. And so I try to share that knowledge with the young girls also in our community to promote it, because I think it's really important.
Yes, it is absolutely important. So you are feeling or have felt recently some momentum with all of this, right? And I love the momentum when something starts growing. It's just like you're like riding on a wave of excitement and energy, you know. But you mentioned selling on Instagram. So first of all, what is your Instagram where people can find you? And then secondly, tell me how you're selling on Instagram. Are you doing Instagram lives? Are they just seeing the pieces that you showcase? But could you share a little more about that?
Sure, yes. So my Instagram is Vintage PS Gal, all together, right? And I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but Instagram mainly. And yeah, I just post things either in my story or on the page, and people will reach out. You know, ooh, I like that. What's the size? You know, and I try to get back to them as quickly as possible on, you know, measurements and price and all of that. And, you know, it is kind of interesting during the pandemic, you know, the store shut down and we couldn't do the markets anymore. And I went back to my roots of sewing and began sewing masks. I have so much fabric because not only do I love vintage clothing, but I love fabric. So I had all this fabric laying around, and I just felt this like need to do something, you know, and I couldn't just sit still. So I started sewing masks and selling them, and then taking part of that profit and donating it to the local food banks because they were just so in need here in the desert. I would drive by the food bank lines, and it just, you know, I just knew that we needed to do something. So that kept me really busy for a few months. And then people were buying stuff online. I think they were at home, you know, and they just wanted something pretty and special, you know. And so I really loved the connections I made during that time with my online buyer. And yeah, there just is a momentum of, you know, the more people you reach, it's nice, you know, because then they'll refer people. And I think that's so important. You know, when people come into my space, I like to make a connection with them. You know, I really like to get to know them. I think that's one of the best parts of doing these shows, is meeting people and making a connection with them.
Well, I am on your Instagram right now, and I see several things that I like. And you have everything from clothing to housewares to, I see your caftan. So are you bringing housewares as well, like and small furniture goods, or just clothing?
No. Yeah, no. This show's mainly just, you know, vintage clothing, accessories, jewelry, vintage hats. I might bring like a jewelry box, or, you know, I've done like a vanity tray before, but no, I really, you know, we like to focus on that kind of stuff for this show. And that's nice. You know, I like that. But yeah, all those other things, I think people can find them, you know, at Victoria's Attic in Palm Springs, or at the market, or, you know, online. So yeah, it's fun.
But tell me about sourcing, because we have a lot of resellers listening right now. And our favorite part, I can't speak for everyone. I just know from a lot of us, going to find it is like the best part. So I want you to tell me, not to give away all your secrets, but like tell me a little bit about how the sourcing is in Palm Springs. But more importantly, like what's your some of your most amazing finds. And I mean, it doesn't have to be that it was inexpensive, but just something just off the charts that you have found, because you are in a community that has a lot of celebrities that have, you know, historically been there. And I just imagine that, you know, there's just a range of things that can be found in an environment like this.
Yes, and it's so funny that you were talking about your collection, because I was, you know, kind of fangirling in my head about the moment when Jeremy Scott walked in our little antique mall and bought something, and I was a flutter, and the people I was working with had no clue who he was, and I was trying to keep it cool. He bought something really little. But he was just so lovely, and it just, I think it made my year. Anyway, so yes, we do, you know, we have people, one time I had Frances McDormand come in the store. She was just a hoot. So yeah, we are lucky that way. We do get to see these people, and they're just like us, but it's also fun to see them, right? So yeah, my sourcing is, I, you know, obviously have deep roots in the Valley, and my parents and grandparents know a lot of people, and so I tend to get phone calls from people, unfortunately, as, you know, parents pass on or people are ready to downsize or whatever, and I will come in and get stuff that way. And sometimes I just go in to just help them to know what they have. You know, a lot of times people don't know what they have, and try to help them source where they should try to let it go to, you know, or source it to.
Sure.
So I also do that because many of them are family friends, you know. So I enjoy that. And then I like to travel anywhere from LA. You know, this summer I went on a big road trip. I went up to Wyoming and Utah after dropping off my kids at school. And I just, you know, Google business or Yelp and look up, you know, vintage stores, thrift stores, and I just take a wander. And I find that that's so fun and such an adventure. And I love to just pull off the road if I see something. And my best friend lives in LA. So I will, you know, she'll be like, how long is it going to take you to get here? You know, it might be 4 hours. And it's not because of traffic, because I just pull off, you know. I always say to my mom, you know, I see a thrift store and I will break.
I've seen those bumper stickers. I break for yard sales. I've seen those.
Yeah, mine is a vintage store or a thrift store.
Exactly.
So yes, I just wander, and I just kind of I don't know how to explain it other than I just go off a feeling. Like one day I'll wake up and be like, you know, I just feel like wandering towards Indio, you know, and I'll just get in the car and wander towards Indio, you know, and that's what I love about it is it's always an adventure. And I just feel like you meet the quirkiest, most interesting people inside of these stores. And I feel that way when I work at the shops, because I work at Victoria's once a week. Just the most fun, quirky, interesting people. And I just love that. So, but as far as pieces found, I mean, you know, I've found a Versace button-up inside of a thrift store, you know, for $8, and it's one of my favorite pieces still today, you know. One time I found a beautiful, because I do furniture as well, I found this beautiful mid-century modern Danish desk that was selling for $30. It was just so beautiful. It's lines, and it had a movable piece, that it had a leaf that popped up. And my husband, I told him, oh, we have to go pick this up. And as I was walking out of the store, some guy offered $200 to take it off my hands before I took it out of the shop. And I said no. And my husband said, are you crazy? Like, he would take it from you for $200 and you paid $30 for it? And I said, yeah, I just have a feeling about this piece, you know. And I took it to the store and sold it for much more and brought it home and said, see, I told you.
Wow, yeah.
So those things happen every once in a while.
A little sidebar on me. My parents, before I was born, so the family story goes, my father was a colonel in the military, and they lived overseas, and they stored everything and went to, I think, Germany. They were in Germany and then in Italy for a while or whatever. But the storage unit burned down, so they had no furniture to come back to or to bring over anything. So they ended up buying an entire house full of Danish modern furniture. Oh. And I grew up with it. Like, it's the only thing I've ever known is this. And I didn't, because to us it was just the old, we called it the old teak wood. And my mother would spend all this time oiling the teak wood. And now it's so valuable. And the thing is, over the years, you know, some of it ended up in the Goodwill. Some of it was broken. Some of it it's dispersed among the children in the family. There's 5 of us. 4 of them have teakwood. I have none, and no one will give me any. They have no sympathy for the fact that I have none. I almost got a table from my brother in Santa Barbara, and then at the last minute, he's like, no, I've decided to keep it. So I am hoping that when I come down there that I will, I'm sure that my childhood will be like reimagined with all of this teakwood, and it was the good kind, like the designer kind, and who knew? And there's pictures of me as a kid, like around all this stuff, and that's literally what I know, and I'm very drawn to it. So I'm really hoping that when I come down there, and once, outside of the time at the show, like when I get a chance to kind of see other things in the city, that I'll be able to, come across these things and kind of relive a bit of my childhood. Although I don't know if I found anything, how I'm getting it back to Pasadena, but it'll be fun to look, But
certainly.
So yeah, this is terrific. So it sounds like you and I are going to have a good time talking vintage while we're there. I love the fact that what we have is completely different, because I'm looking on your website, so that's great. Like, you have what I call true vintage, and mine is like very much like 80s, 90s, vintage era,
right,
and very, very specific. And what I have found, and I've gone to a few of these. Like, I went to a couple of events in LA, and these, like, I don't know what to call them, but it's like the curated event, but they were held here in LA and I guess Burbank. And what's fascinating is when you see a lot of something in one place. So, like, there'll be the person who likes denim, or the person who likes, I'll call it cotton lacy dresses person, like where everything is the same color. I'm trying to say it's the same color,
right,
the same style, the same thing.
Yes.
They each have their little like niches, right, which is really cool. So I'm going to be showing up with my 80s and 90s Moschino. We'll see.
I love it. I love it.
We'll see. I'm going to be like a traveling business card, because this hopefully I don't know how it's going to play down there, but we will definitely find out. But it sounds like people just love vintage, and that's what you want. I mean, if nothing more, to watch people get excited, and for them to know that we all exist and that this is out there. I think it's great. So this is wonderful. I love learning about you, Shelly, and that you have this wonderful passion that you are embarking on. What it was, well, it is still part-time, but it's kind of more part-time than it ever was before, as you get into all of this. And your enthusiasm is so terrific, and so I just appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Listen to me, I can't even talk today. With our listeners and our listeners would like to know before we wrap it up. And just so you know, everyone, once again, the event is called Curated Event during Modernism Week in Palm Springs. It's October 16th. You can buy tickets on the Modernism Week website. It has been created by Mitchell Karp, who also owns Mitchell's, which is a vintage store in Palm Springs. He's the mastermind behind all of this, bringing 17 vendors together. I am one. Shelly is another, with all different kinds of vintage into one place. It'll be a wonderful day trip if you're in the LA area. If you want to come down for the weekend, hotel prices are very high, as I discovered, but it's totally worth it. So that's what's happening. And we'll wrap it up here, Shelly. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we go?
Oh, I want to thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to share my story. And I just look forward to the event. And I just encourage people, like you said, to come down, take a day trip, stop by. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I think that, I love when, there's kind of a community formed around something. And so I'm grateful for all the other dealers that I know that do what I do. We're very supportive of one another. We always try to, if we don't have it, we send them on, so I'm grateful for that. And, just thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, it's my pleasure, Shelly. And Look forward to seeing you in Palm Springs. And for all you listening, this is Jennie Walker with Closet Conversations. If you like what you heard today, please think about giving it a 5-star review. 5-star review would be great on iTunes. Sharing this link with your friends and other people that you know love vintage, reselling, and all of the like. And I just look forward to having you with me on a future episode. If you'd like to be in touch with me, please reach out to me via Instagram at Jennie Girl's Closet. I do read all of my messages and look forward to connecting with you there. Take care.